Hi there, and welcome to the weekly roundup here in the Sleep Coach School. We're gonna do a roundup, of course, but then we're gonna look at a comment. As you probably know, on Fridays I like to find a comment from the community that we can learn from and that we can expand on. And in fact, today we're gonna look at a somewhat critical comment. Initially it was critical, and then I think we had a kind of a kumbaya moment too. But what I want to say here is that we're going to look at a comment that kind of questioned a choice I made, a choice I made in regards to a video I uploaded and a topic I chose, and it made me ponder. So to get a little bit more specific here, it was Tuesday's episode of Heard Online, where actually a student of ours in the Insomnia Immunity program had found an article that he found was quite triggering, but I thought we could learn a lot from it, so I decided to talk about it. And then Patty said this was not helpful at all, and that made me ponder this a lot. Like, on one hand, when it comes to these perceived threats, like the internal struggles, it is when we're facing what we thought was a real threat, when we're kind of facing our fears, that's when the brain sees that, oh, there's actually nothing there, and the fear subsides. On the other hand, that I teach a lot about, like, how we can just, like, let's not check the time at night. Let the time be sleepless, because it can be so triggering to see the time. So, like, which is it? Should we, like, be willing to face what we fear, or should we avoid triggers? And that's what we'll talk about after we look at the comments today, in addition to a roundup, of course. So let's start where we typically start, which is with Monday. So Monday, we had Insomnia Insight number 474, where we talked about these 3 steps to liberated sleep. To be more specific, I found over the years that there's these 3 things that I always tend to teach when somebody asks me, like, how can I start sleeping next to my husband again? I'm sleeping on the couch. Or how can I come off this pill that I don't want to be on? And if that sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, check out the Monday's episode. Tuesday, we had the Heard Online episode that I just referred to. There's a Turkish man. He's 89 years old, and he, believes that he hasn't slept at all for many, many years. And we see, like, when we look at that article, that this sounds like a typical case of what we call paradoxical insomnia, when somebody actually sleeps but just isn't aware of it. But there were many other things that could be really learned from that, which includes Mr. Inansh actually saying that now he looks at this like a gift, like he can do so many things when he's awake. So a lot to learn there, but we're going to talk about more about, like, the triggering thing in a second. Wednesday, we had our weekly live Q&A session, and Coach Michelle guested. And if you want to check it out, actually I start that video without Michelle, and I actually didn't know where she was. She was just actually a minute late, but then she just pops up, and I'm like, hi, you're here. So it was a little funny moment there. But anyways, always when there's live Q&A questions, I think that brings so much value. So definitely, if you'd like to listen to questions from the community and our replies to them, check that out. Thursday, which was yesterday, we had Talking Insomnia number 113. Ben from Brisbane, Australia, guested our show, and it was a very nice story of leaving insomnia twice, actually. And particularly for somebody who's kind of a deep thinker, ponderer, I think that's a good episode to look at. Now, let's look at our comments from this week. And this is again a comment on our Heard Online episode, where Patty said, "This video was a huge trigger for me. I wish I never saw it. I was just beginning to get my sleep confidence up, moving from 0 to 3 hours to like 4 or 5, finally setting down my anxiety. And unfortunately, I watched this. I love your stuff, Daniel, but this took me down. Befriending wakefulness. Okay, but this." Any words of reassurance to talk me down from this? My brain immediately goes, oh my goodness, could I turn into this now? The thought has entered. Thanks. And, of course, when I saw this, I was like, the first thing that comes to mind is like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, questioning kind of my own decision. And the sort of irony here is that the reason somebody brought this article up was that they found it triggering. So my idea was like, okay, let's talk about this, so we see that there's actually nothing in the article that is anything to, there's no substance there. It's just a very, very common case of somebody who isn't perceiving their sleep as much. So anyway, this did lead to some kind of pondering, and the question again came up, like, when should we allow ourselves to be triggered and face what we fear, and when is it best to kind of like, let's not trigger ourselves, because there's sort of like things that I say can be sort of conflicting there. So anyways, I ponder this a little bit, and I want to say, first of all, that yes, it is true that when we're scared of something that is not an actual real threat, like we're afraid of being awake, or we're scared of emotions, we're scared of uncertainty, we're scared of losing control and things like that. It's when we're willing to expose ourselves, meaning like we're willing to be like, okay, it's okay if I'm awake, it's okay to feel anxious, it's okay not to be certain. That's when the brain sees that, oh, this is actually not a real threat. We've been treating it as a real threat, but it isn't, and that's when things, when the fear fades out. But at the same point, like, the gentle and kind way is really what leads us where we want to be. Meaning, if somebody hears this and says, oh, okay, I've got to really trigger myself now, I got to like do the most scary thing I can think of so that my fear goes away, you can see that that's not going to lead to where we want to be. There's too much force there. We kind of trying to force our fear to go away, rather than just being willing to experience it and see it fade automatically. So I wrote down like 3 points on this topic, which was number one, when, for example, not checking the time or deciding not to Google, sleep things, when that feels nice, and it feels like, it doesn't lead to like sort of an more triggers than we need to have at any point. I think this is a nice and gentle way. There's no rush, And the second thing, and this is not an uncommon scenario, somebody who understands this. Like, I have an example of, one of our students who really wanted to go camping, but had not been camping because of their trouble with sleep. And they decided, okay, I'm going to face this fear, and put up like the camping equipment in their backyard so they could make themselves camp in the backyard to not be scared. But this is too like artificial. It's not actually like the real exposure to what we're scared of. It's like an attempt to create a fear so that our fear goes away. So we can see we can't manufacture these things or manipulate things or use tricks or hacks. It's the willingness to experience the kind of the actual scenario that we were scared of, and be in that scenario without trying to avoid it. That's really what leads to where we want to be. And finally, oftentimes, we may have this question of like, okay, I'm not Googling anything about sleep. I'm sort of avoiding that now, and that feels good now. But am I still not like avoiding things in a little bit? Shouldn't I just like, do whatever I feel like? And the answer is like, of course, we all want to be at a place where we have no rules, no limitations. We're not avoiding anything. We're just living life. But the thing is, that often happens all by itself. So often it's somebody who's decided like, I'm not going to check the time at night, and then randomly they're traveling or something happens and see the time at night, and then like, oh, it wasn't that triggering, and then this resolves itself. So in conclusion here, I want to say that I hope everyone knows that all I do here is like really trying to be meaningful and helpful, and I hope that that Patty, that you found that this made sense what I said here, and that everyone felt that that there was more benefit to triggering things in Tuesday's episode. And in fact, Jonathan, I thought it was a very, very helpful episode. So yeah, I want to conclude there. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and look forward to next week here. And as always, if you're finding your way to where you want to be, that is amazing and wonderful, and let us know. If not, if you find that things are a little tricky and you're kind of stuck in the struggle, you're not seeing the path to where you want to be, then of course, visit our website, find a coaching option that suits you, and we would love to see you on the inside if you decide to join. That said, again, have a wonderful weekend, and look forward to having you back real soon. Until then, bye-bye.